All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Reprecedented webinar series. And today's webinar, back to campus visits, but not like before. I'm Jared Smith. I'm the VP of Strategy at Echo Delta and also the host of the Higher Ed Marketing Lab podcast. I will keep the self-promotion brief, but for those of you who aren't familiar with Echo Delta, we provide marketing services and enrollment consulting for smaller colleges and universities around the country. If you want to know more about what we do, you can hop over to echodelta.co. So on to today's webinar. That's enough self-promotion. For those who are just tuning in to the Reprecedented webinar series, we want to welcome you. We created this series to focus on the very real challenges of selling residential place-based education in what is now year 2 of a pandemic. This is the second of 4 webinars, and let me see if I can advance my screen here. There we go. This is the second of 4 webinars we'll be doing at this time each Wednesday over the next 3 weeks. And if you can't make it to one of the live sessions, don't worry. We'll be sending out recordings after each one and making those widely available. I do want to call out a slight change in programming. Next week, we're going to be talking about driving inquiries in the radically evolving, increasingly privacy-focused digital landscape. And then the following week, we'll be taking a closer look at parent engagement. But today is all about the campus visit, and I can't think of anyone better to dive into that topic than today's guests. So first up, joining us today is Jeff Kallay. Jeff is a leading authority on campus visitation who has worked with hundreds of schools across the country to help them craft impactful, authentic visit experiences that resonate with prospective students. Jeff brings with him 20 years of experience in and around higher education, and I don't think you will find a more passionate advocate for both schools and the students they hope to reach. Joining Jeff is Mae Watters, Assistant Director of Admissions at Sewanee, the University of the South. Mae graduated from Sewanee in 1993 and began her career in higher ed in admissions at Agnes Scott College, another great school, where she eventually became the Director of Enrollment. In 2006, she returned to her alma mater, where she has been in admissions ever since. Both Jeff and Mae are thoughtful and enthusiastic advocates for the campus visit, and I'm excited to welcome them both. Jeff and Mae, thank you so much for joining us and welcome. Please tell me my microphone is working for all of that.
I heard you, Jared. Can you
hear me? Great. Jared, you were awesome.
Thank you so much. I got partway through and I was like, wait a minute, I am unmuted, right? Okay. So, well, Jeff, Mae, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you've got a fantastic conversation, so much to talk about. Audience members, I'm actually going to be in the background. I'm going to stop my video and I'll be monitoring Q&A. So if you have questions as they come up, please feel free to make use of the Zoom's Q&A feature, and we'll ping Jeff and Mae and see if we can work in any questions you might have. So Jeff, Mae, I'll leave it to you guys. Take it away.
Thanks, Jared. Jeff,
hey,
good to see you.
You too.
Always a pleasure.
It is great to see you. When the fine folks at Echo Delta asked me to guest host or Reprecedented, we were originally going to call it Post Up, like post-pandemic, post-census, and then things kind of changed.
Right.
I was like, I will happily talk about the campus visit, but I want to bring in Mae Watters up at Sewanee to talk about it with me. And thank you for doing that. And thanks to Echo Delta for hosting. And thank you all who are here live. Now, I got a couple questions before we dig in. We're going to, Mae, when it comes to webinars and these things, do you watch them live, or are you more that asynchronous versus synchronous person?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I work with student volunteers, so you're a firefighter, 18 hours a day. So, the ability to sign up for a webinar and then have the recording sent to you is sometimes mission critical. Certainly, I do it pretty frequently.
I agree
as well.
I sign up with every intention of watching live,
of course.
And then, as you said, things, and we want to talk about you and your students. So I've known you for years.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in Atlanta the same time down the street from each other in the
And we
very
had no
awesome.
idea. We must have walked by each other so many times, Jeff.
Yeah.
And we probably have
Or I might have stumbled by you coming home from one of the many bars and taverns in the Virginia Island area.
And I might have been stumbling in the opposite direction.
So you're a graduate of a small liberal arts college.
I am.
How'd you end up at Sewanee?
How did I end up in Sewanee? That's a great question. I was really looking, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland originally, and was really looking at schools really maybe 200, 250 miles away from home. And of course, keep in mind, this is the 80s. Like there's no World Wide Web, www didn't exist. And one day I was a senior in high school. It was the middle of my senior year. A beautiful book came in the mail and it was about a place called Sewanee. And I was like, oh my gosh, this place looks amazing. And it wasn't, there are a lot of beautiful liberal arts colleges out there. And it wasn't the student, it wasn't the pictures, it wasn't the beautiful architecture, and it is beautiful. It was the students that really resonated with me. And I was like, they really look like they're enjoying themselves and interacting with each other. And when I thought about the places that I'd visited, that was not true across the board at all. And I was like, I went to my college counselor and I said, I have something resonates with me about this place. And she said, it's really late in the process, dear. And I said, I know, but I need to apply. So I did. I was admitted, came to visit my April of my senior year. And I was like, this is it. And it was, again, not just the beauty of the place, it was the people that really spoke to me. It's the community.
Yeah, Sewanee was a Target X campus visit client when David Lassane was there, and he's now Randolph-Macon. And then again as a renderer. I went to college down in Cleveland, Tennessee at Lee College. Like I like to call Lee the University of the New South. But that's a whole other.
Indeed.
and have always been familiar. So people aren't familiar. Sewanee is up on the domain, right? Up on top of Mount Eagle.
Cumberland Plateau.
Between Nashville and Chattanooga. 13,000 plus acres.
It is second largest campus in the country.
After Barry University.
After Barry. So, I think Barry's at 27,000 acres right now, but they don't have our elevation. But
and we're a university because we also have an Episcopalian seminary attached, correct?
We do have a school of theology as well.
Our traditional national ranked liberal arts college with about how many undergrads?
We're right at 1795. So we're definitely on the smaller side.
And the Southern Diocese of the Episcopalian Church.
It is owned and operated by the Southern Diocese of the Episcopal Church. Though, while we definitely have a strong Episcopal tradition, I would say based on this past year's incoming class, 20 to 25% of our class each year identify as Episcopalian. So it certainly is a very inclusive community.
So not a lot of students per acreage. Acreage work, right? Everyone gets 100 acres.
Everybody gets 7 acres, actually.
Beautiful views, lots of outdoor. And the architecture is modeled after Oxford, correct? With that connection to the Church of England. And some awesome traditions that it's so funny. Your competitors talk about how we don't have the traditions like Sewanee, but I find working with Sewanee, some of those traditions are kind of difficult to explain to a 16 or 17-year-old.
They are, and that's why you got to come. You've got to visit. You've got to visit. Sewanee is a very unique community. It's a very unique location. And
it is rural, right? I mean, even though it's between Nashville and Chattanooga, it's up on the mountain.
It absolutely is. And what I challenge students to do is come and spend a day on campus. Interact with as many students as you possibly can. Those layers of student interaction are so important. And that's something that I think you taught us back in 2008 when you did an original site visit with us. So really leveraging your student experiences, but also so that people can really experience those traditions. Like, we have a tradition of a passing hello. You're not going to see Sewanee students buried in their phone, not acknowledging people. When you pass somebody on campus, you say, hey, how are you? Good morning. Good to see you. Have a nice day.
We're intentional to go to a place-based education with community. We're being human up in that community, and we want to show that on the campus visit. That's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've known each other, and I have my Sewanee cup that you gave me last time I was on campus. It has water in it. Viewers, when Mae and I usually are on a Zoom on a Friday afternoon, there might be something else in my Sewanee mug, but today, Mae, it's just disappointing.
Just water, and I just have tea. So,
okay. And I got some purple and white on. But in full disclosure, I'll be wearing the same thing tomorrow at your competitor, Furman University. But anyhow,
I won't tell anybody. It's
okay.
It's okay.
So Sewanee's had some. Let's talk real quick about some enrollment success. Then about what happened when the dominoes fell, and where you're at now. And then you're a pro at the campus visit. That's why I wanted to chat with you. Is some campus visit coordinators are really great at the tactics. Some are really good at the strategy, but like you're a top one at doing both. So you've had some enrollment success last years at Sewanee.
We have. For the past 5 years, we've been growing enrollment. We have met our goals for the past, 3 years, which has been amazing, especially given the pandemic situation that we found ourselves in.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And certainly this is a huge team effort, and we have a very experienced team at Sewanee. And so we're incredibly lucky with not much turnover. And in the past, several amazing deans, David Lassane, who you mentioned, Leanne Backlund, who have really moved us forward over the past 15 years.
And so the Great Recession hasn't impacted staff as much as it has at other clients?
I don't think it has. We have an amazing retention, and where we see losses, especially among our counseling staff, they're young, they're going on to graduate school opportunities. Many of our staff are Sewanee alums as well. So there's a huge buy-in.
So what were some of the hallmarks of your visit before the pandemic?
Oh, well, you came and did a site visit in the spring of 2019, because honestly, the year before, I was really disappointed with how our visits performed overall. So I said, we need to bring Jeff and his team in. You guys came, you did 2 site visits, you did a little work with our student ambassadors, which they loved. By the way, they still talk about
you. Love them. That when they were playing center, it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon in the spring when it had been raining and snowing. And then you all were playing Center College for the Southern Association Athletic Conference title, right?
Yep.
We were streaming, and it was the Sunday after, but they were in like a near windowless room, but were so engaged and so appreciative, and we were grateful for them. Just smart, really great storyteller. So anyhow, talking about Katie,
so we really, based on y'all's recommendations, we reworked our visit program with the goal being that we really had to have more of our seniors who are visiting convert to applicant status. And that was something that we had not seen over the past 2 years. So we really put in place a more limited visit option program. And really with the thought that, okay, in the past, we've been having students come, and like we have some students that are doing 4 or 5 class visits, 2 faculty appointments, 2 athletic appointments. This is getting out of control. It's really hard to manage. And it's also just not working. So let's give people fewer options, because we all know it is sexier to conceal than to reveal. And at most,
a little bit of a dance.
It is a dance. At most small schools, and this is across the board, the more times a student visits, the more likely they are to enroll. Absolutely. So save some of those options that your seniors might have for the spring when they're admitted. Have your juniors visit and then have them come back as seniors the fall of their senior year. There's some more things that they can do, and then they come back again and again. So really, making sure that you're not showing your hand right out of the gate. Very important. And it worked. We started converting our visits at 75 to 77% with our seniors in fall of 2019, as opposed to 40 to 55%.
Every time we tell clients, put parameters on it, put limitations on it, a little bit of a velvet rope, almost 99%. I know it's so counter to what most leadership wants to do. But by choosing to say, we're going to give tours when it's best for everyone. I think what you all did, it had its dividend.
It really worked. And we were so pleased. And it really set us up, Jeff, in a very, it put us in an enviable position that we went into the pandemic with.
Okay,
Number
let's
one,
talk about that.
yeah, so many students had visited and they'd had amazing visit experiences. And then, March 13th, we shut down. But we had so many visitors that we were able to yield the biggest class in Sewanee's history, even in the middle of a pandemic. And so I think there's a real power to what we put in place as a result of your site visit.
Okay, so but you did you continued parts of customization throughout the pandemic online, right? So the dominoes fell, as I like to say, and as we had in this description. And when did you all shut down campus? When we just thought we were going to be closed for 2 weeks?
Right, we shut down, we canceled our visits. We went out with cancellations on March the 14th, and we reopened on Monday, March the 16th, 2020, with some limited virtual visit options because
2020 or 2021? You were open and 2 days later?
We were open, but we were not open to in-person visitors.
Got it. Okay.
But
okay.
we were, and none of us were in the office really, but we knew that we were still going to be most of us were working at our dining room tables. None of us envisioned the fact that we would need home offices permanently. But we knew that we had to go out of the gate that coming Monday with some virtual visit options. I think that
you got them up fast.
We got them up really fast. Yeah. And they were very basic, but there were two concerns that we had. It was one, our admitted students. Obviously, we had 6 weeks to still yield a class, but also our current students, our ambassadors, had been sent home. And we had no idea when they were going to come back. And they ended up not obviously coming back that semester. And so keeping them engaged in the process. And that was a very emotional time, I think, for all of us, because these are students that we all care about. And we want to, make sure that we're providing support for them too. So it was something that worked well for us.
You had a U-Visit virtual tour before the pandemic, is that correct?
We did not, and we never have.
Okay.
So we went out the door we did have some students that were still on campus that were trained tour guides. So we were able to provide Zoom tours. So some of our international students couldn't leave. But I think like many people, we went out the door with too much. And way too much. And lesson learned, we've really pulled back on those virtual visit options, especially. But I think we were all just in desperation mode. Like we've got to yield. So we were willing to do anything. If we have to have a student panel with 4 current students and 1 prospective student or admitted applicant, we'll do it. Like whatever it takes. So that is not a good idea. Short term, it was fine, but I think that's the biggest lesson in terms of virtual is that not only do your virtual options like be very sparing with them and your offerings with them, but also make sure that you're following up with your virtual visitors the same way that you would your in-person visitors. So make sure they're receiving.
Tell me more. You use Slate, right?
We do.
Okay, so tell me more. That's a brilliant. So tell me more about that, following up.
So, I think, most of us, everybody uses a CRM now. Your follow-up is very automated. Our follow-up email is going to students and parents 18 hours after their visit. That's awesome. But you know what? Guess what? They're receiving that same email from every school that they visit, basically. Sure. So what's going to set you apart and what differentiates you after that visit? Our counselors all write handwritten notes to all of the students that visit. The counselor who conducted the information session writes a follow-up postcard. And a week after the visit, we have a student use our messaging platform and they push out a message saying, "Hey, my name is Ellie Tate, and I know that you visited last week. If you have follow-up questions about student life at Sewanee, let me know. I'd love to chat with you."
Are you getting responses from any of those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The visit follow-up is the biggest response that we get from our messaging platform. And it's because, and Jeff, you were a tour guide in college. I know that you were a fantastic tour guide, but
I like to think so.
You and I would have had so much fun on a tour. Oh my gosh.
True. It's true.
It's very true. I might go on tour with you. You're amazing. You're fantastic, but we don't share any interests.
Different majors, different, just not shared interests. Exactly.
Right. But when you hear from somebody else a week later and it's a student, you have the comfort level to say, gosh, yeah, I do have some questions about X. I had a good tour. Jeff was really nice, but just didn't share any interest with him. Who can I talk to about, this or that?
Brands are mirrors, right? We purchase based upon conforming self-image. And
Absolutely.
How many students can you put in front of a prospective family during their campus visit, online or in person?
Right. So the online visit follow-up is so important. So make sure you're treating your virtual visitors the same way and with the same importance. And also make sure that, especially if they're seniors, that you're following up with a visit message too and saying, we know that you did X virtual visit option. Please schedule an in-person visit. We hope you like what you saw. It's just that follow-up is so important. And I think that that's a loop that we didn't understand until about 6 months into the pandemic. It's like all ideas. We were just like, ding, ding, ding. Like, why aren't we doing this?
So we scrambled, we got stuff up. It was all Zoom. It sounds like most of it.
Most of it was Zoom. Now Slate does, of course, have a great, presentation option, or a couple actually. And we do utilize those for different things. But I think the other thing with your virtual visits is they have to be really complementary of each other. And you don't want to offer too many on the same day. It's so important.
I went to your point, when all this went down, I said to my then colleague, Brittany Joyce, who was then vice president at R&L Render, I said, we're going to virtual ourselves out of business, right? Place-based education, if we're not careful with all of this, right?
Right.
But you brought in a good class in fall of 2020.
We did.
Students came back in limited capacity to the domain.
All came back. We were really lucky. Now, maybe a third of our classes were online still, but students were back on campus, and we didn't reopen. We reopened fairly early for in-person visits, and that was in October of this past year.
Okay. October of 2021 for visits, or 2020?
2020.
2020. Okay. So in the middle of that first semester.
Right.
Okay.
And it was really limited. It was just seniors. Of course, we had a lot of health protocols in place, a lot of limits on the number of visitors that we had. That was tough. And I think that actually boded well for us, because I think many of us who work at small schools are so customer service oriented that it's very hard to say no. And all of a sudden we found ourselves in the position where we had to say no, like, our tour has reached capacity. You can do a self-guided tour. So
you had a no, but, or a no, and, right? No, and you have this available.
Well, I think you should always have a no and another option. It does help saying no.
Did you max out your capacity?
We did. Most of the time we did max our capacity out. And that was tough, but we did have a self-guided tour option, and a lot of people did take advantage of that. And that was an important one to have for us.
Were you keeping the online stuff going last fall?
We did. So we still had Zoom tours. We had student panels. We had a career readiness session. We did a number of, we did online faculty appointments. Really anything a student asked for, we were able to make happen for them virtually. And we knew that we had to. It was important for them to have that interaction and that experience.
And then when did we get going to, are you at full?
We're at full capacity now. Yeah, we reopened this fall at full capacity.
And brought in a Phenomenal class.
Another record class. So, it's really nice to be able to say, yeah, we hit our goals again. And our visits really, really worked again. Even when we're just, in last spring, we did campus tours, but again, they were limited in capacity and no information sessions, nothing else. But we did a lot of virtual things. We did very small segmented virtual events, especially for our admitted students. We offered, virtual class visit experiences with faculty. Those were incredibly popular and they converted at a really high level for us.
It's on this spring 2021.
2021.
Yeah, so you did a lot of little things, but made that emotional connection based upon affinity.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
is it awkward to have a Zoom tour of your 2 art facilities? Absolutely, especially if you have a faculty member who's not particularly comfortable using a stabilizer. And so, we had some funny situations go down. Though
you have to appreciate the effort.
I do. And I don't think people take any offense at situations like that, because it's happened to all of us at this point virtually. We've done something dreadful and our child has walked in.
So did events return on campus or just daily individual visits?
This fall we've had events already. And we don't have any visitor limits. And we are seeing definitely at least 15 to 20% increases each month in visitors versus fall of 2019.
Right. So, in our description, we talked about, okay, we're still in this. Mae, I've been on a lot of campuses and some, geography plays a part in this, right? Sunbelt, Southern, I think had the fortune to be open. And if you could be open, that really helped your enrollment. I think
Absolutely.
Most people in geography in the pandemic would say that. But what do you, are you nearing singularity? And I don't mean what is singularity when AI becomes sentient? Are you like, is it still virtual and on campus? Are you blending them more? Are you getting towards this, what I like to call this one campus visit, or is it still?
I think we're blending them and we're making sure that our virtual options are drivers for the in-person experience. And
so they're not a replacement, they're a driver.
Right. So if you like what you see, then you need to schedule an in-person visit. And we've also become very choosy about how many sessions we offer. And I think especially at smaller schools, that's really important because again, beginning of the pandemic, we would hold a student panel and there would be 2 visitors and 4 panelists. And that's kind of weird and honestly a little creepy sometimes. So, have those student panels maybe once a month so that you have 30 or 40 students and you have a really robust conversation. For instance, today we offer a Zoom tour every other week. We have 25 kids signed up for a Zoom tour. And then we have, 25 kids signed up for a virtual mock class and, with a politics professor. So those are
I would like that class.
He's an amazing professor. I think they're going to have so much fun with him.
And the Zoom tour is live.
It is a live tour. Yeah.
Okay.
And the faculty, for our virtual mock classes, we limit them to 20, 30-minute class and then 5 or 10 minutes of Q&A. That's all we can take, let's face it, via Zoom. So making sure that those virtual options are short, they're to the point, and they're showcasing what is unique about your university or your college. What's unique is our students and their stories and our faculty and the relationships they build with those students. And so those are the 2 things that we've really chosen to showcase, especially this fall.
So this spring, it sounds like you're going to continue and build upon your yield success with on-campus and the online experiences. Yes?
I hope so. And we do anticipate continuing most of our our virtual options this spring for juniors as well as for seniors. I think that that's really important because, again, I might visit Sewanee and it might be a terrible day, and I might have a tour guide that I just don't connect with. And I might interact with a number of different students, but none of them have, share my specific interests or goals. And I think goals is something that is overlooked in the virtual experience, and remembering how outcomes focused these students are. So making sure that you do have something that is outcomes focused for them.
I agree, right? And I think that's where Zoom's allowed us to bring in young alumni that are in graduate school or professional school, or
Right.
in New York or Atlanta doing their job, and allowing them to come in from their home or their home office more robustly and with ease.
Absolutely. So yeah, I do, we leverage our young alumni with our alumni interviewer program, and that is a virtual program still. And I don't anticipate it ever returning really to in-person connections with the alums, because it just gives us so much flexibility.
That even if it's an on-campus event, you can still bring them in and put them up on the screen. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So what I'm hearing, lessons learned are, we over-programmed, but I mean, it was the pandemic, so we learned.
Right.
We're now thinking of the online as the promotion and the driver to include, right, to get them to come and visit. And we're being intentional with our online follow-up, the same as the on-campus.
Absolutely. Very intentional. Yeah.
So, you talked about the community, which is so unique, but let's, your students are inquisitive and bright, and it's a beautiful setting. Honors students wear academic regalia, correct?
We do. They're academic
faculty.
They do.
Okay. I like that's really, it took a lot getting used to, but I liked it when I saw it. I was like, that's cool. I was getting a coffee at the blue chair, coffee, and the faculty member came in. I was like, oh yeah, and he had his regalia on, and
he's got his gown on.
That's cool. I'm all for that. Is the great stuff about like space and place. So you're Arcadians. That's what we call our student guides, right? Because it takes a community besides the admissions leadership and the team that you work with. Talk to us about your student guides. How are they doing? I had this revelation when a client said to me last month, Jeff, I've got tour guides that have never given a tour before the pandemic.
Right.
They've never hosted an event before the pandemic, that when they came in to the guide program, it was like, I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I mean, tell us about the Arcadians, and why are they called the Arcadians?
Well, it is based on a quote from a book called Lanterns on the Levee, that Sewanee, to paraphrase, Sewanee is so beautiful. It is like Arcadia, essentially. So they are the Arcadians. And last year was a tough year for them. We had students that were scared when we went back to giving in-person tours, understandably, to give tours. This is before a vaccine was available. And we had students that were frustrated by just the number of tours that we were able to offer, and that wasn't many, and we couldn't go into buildings like most people. So we did have about 35, 40 new guides that had never given a tour going into a building. And we had a lot of guides who had been a year and a half before they'd given a tour, since they'd given a tour going into a building. So we really thought long and hard about training this year, and brought students back a little bit early, knowing that we were going to have to put some effort into making sure that not only did they know the tour route, which is pretty darn important, but they also knew their stories, and they could own their stories. And the buildings that they didn't identify with as strongly, they had strong talking points about. So we really leveraged, and we really relied on staff and faculty who are really gatekeepers in these buildings and are ones that teach there. I think about Snowden Hall, which is our forestry building. It is an amazing, amazing building. Of course, as a history major, as I was, or our English majors, they don't spend much time in Snowden. So it's really important for them to hear from Martin Knoll, who's the department chair, and hear about a little bit about the department, but also really importantly, what the alums who have graduated in that major are doing with their degrees, because they're doing some really amazing and cool things. And some fun facts about the building too. It just gives guides so much confidence. And also, I mean, you talk about the meeting that we had with them when you and Brittany were with us. Gaylor Auditorium is kind of a deadly place because there are like essentially no windows. Yeah. And I hate cooping kids up for 6 hours. Let's do a roundtable discussion of tough questions. Oh, wow. Like nobody ever called their mom and was like, ooh, this was a really fun roundtable discussion. If you get kids out there learning on their feet, learning experientially, they enjoy it. They're not bored. They're taking notes. They're engaged and they're learning.
And you have how many students, Arcadians? We
have about 120 active students.
That's a big.
It's a really big.
That's like what, 7% of your student population?
Yeah.
And are they, do you have student leadership within that?
We do. So I work with 7 co-directors of the program, and then we filter down to a group of 14 Arcadian leaders who really manage the day-to-day. Okay. Co-directors really manage big picture items for me. Okay. And, you filter down to the Arcadian leaders who each work with a group. And, honestly, it works really, really well.
And do you use GroupMe, Slack, Teams?
We use GroupMe. Yeah.
Okay.
And that is their preferred method of communication. So.
Okay, GroupMe, good to know.
Yeah. But we use Google Calendar pretty extensively as well. So.
And are they paid or volunteer?
Well, they are technically volunteers. Now we do have an incentive program that's based on a point system. So they earn, I think, 5 points per tour. It depends on what they're doing, a lunch hosting, a special project. Did they work on a blog post for us? So everything is worth something a little bit different. And then at the end of the semester, they can redeem the points for either an Amazon gift card or what we call domain dollars that get credited to their account. They can use them at restaurants in the area. Very popular. Some of them roll their domain dollars over until graduation and receive a large check from the university, also popular. So,
so you just bank them until you graduate.
You bank them, right.
I like it.
The university cashes it. I mean, I had a student 2 years ago who got a $900 check. I was like, James,
so what
you're taking me to dinner.
Yeah. Well, how have you kept them incentivized or engaged during? So swag?
Lots of gifts over the past year and a half. They've gone above and beyond. They are the reason that we have yielded 2 huge classes.
And does campus recognize that?
They absolutely do. They actually, the Sewanee Purple, which is the student-run paper, just did an article a couple of weeks ago, and the lead quote was, "The Arcadians were the reason that we have this great class."
That gives me chills, right? Because that's awesome that the campus recognizes it and that you all played that part and that they're getting that recognition.
Right.
But it's going to help in the recruitment of.
Absolutely. But I think, last year was a tough year for them in so many ways. They faced isolation and mental health issues like never before. And so knowing that admission kept reaching out and saying, hey, we're going to buy pizza for you this week. Sign up if you want to get a personal pan pizza. That's what we'll do. We'll give you a mug. The mugs were really, really popular. So last semester, we gave them a piece of nice swag, like good quality swag, and a meal every month. So we were just always sort of there.
And similar thank yous to the faculty and staff that are really supportive.
Absolutely. We're about to kick off a faculty connections campaign for, targeted at some of our seniors in high school, and we take good care of them.
Okay. So what differences have you noticed from the millennial Arcadian of the past, to the new to the solid into Gen Z? I've seen my differences.
Oh man. Wow. And and I love both generations. Oh my gosh, what a relief they were after Gen X. And I can say that to you because we're both Gen Xers.
Both Gen Xers.
I know, right?
Right. Yes.
And you know what? We're doing it each day, Joe.
Exactly.
You know, the millennials were a breath of fresh air because they're really team oriented.
Totally.
They want to be successful. They're very outwardly focused. You know, my biggest qualm with our new friends is that I cannot tell you how many times a week a student says to me, how can I be your favorite? How can I get that A plus? And I'm like, just do your job.
Interesting.
I don't play favorites.
I think there's a bit more individualism. I think the resume, versus that collaborative, we're all in this together, High School Musical, millennial.
Right. Exactly. And it's very much a resume builder. I mean, and I want it to be, and it should be. This is the position that it should be, but the
millennials did it for love of school. Gen Z, okay, but what's in it for me? Like, I've heard guides say that.
Right.
Like, what's in it for me to be a tour guide or ambassador?
Right. And, the number of letters of recommendation that I write has gone up so much in the past 2 years.
So talk about how are parents and students behaving? When I mean behaving, I don't mean are they wearing the mask? Hopefully they're all whatever, your protocol for, but how like, what are you seeing? Are they showing up on time? Are the parents asking all the questions? Are the students engaged, with both online? Talk to me about what you're seeing with prospective family behavior.
Right. We've been very deliberate, knowing that our students and our families are making very much a joint decision on college.
So purchasing.
Right. And so in the same token, we do feel very strongly that the parents and students have very different questions and live in very different spaces. So we have continued our longstanding practice of breaking students and parents up on tour. This week, and it's only Wednesday, I've already gotten 5 visit evaluations saying, I loved not being on tour with my mother. And mothers saying, I loved not being on tour with my daughter. It is the most popular thing that people comment on in our visit. But we give a lot of other opportunities. We do lunch hosting for our seniors. Parents are not going to lunch with them. This is not a situation. Now, they do partner on some things, the information session, student panels, parents are welcome, but we do have to provide those separate spaces for them. And I feel very strongly about that.
And even you had said earlier in the prep call, you're having more younger students show up.
We definitely are. I mean, I think everybody is seeing more freshmen, more sophomores, and definitely more juniors than we typically would see in the fall. And I think that is so important to watch, because it's all well and good to say, my campus visits are up by 20% every month. What's up? I mean, are your seniors up? So you better be watching those senior numbers. Let's be careful.
Because, right, this class is similar, this high school senior is similar to the one from the Great Recession, right? Like, right. When that hit, everyone at NACA was, and then you really didn't feel it the next year, but then that next year,
right?
It's really right. It wasn't so much the incoming, it was that. So come back to the parents. So even with so if I'm a high school sophomore, I'm going out with this. Okay, we're splitting.
Yep.
I've been wanting to do that at so many schools, and I appreciate you all listening to us about that and making that happen. And do you have Arcadians that prefer a parent tour over?
I definitely do. And we do give, especially our seniors, I think play much better with parents, and they prefer parents because, especially in the spring of their senior year, they have jobs, they've had internships, they've had study abroad opportunities. And these are the things parents want to hear.
And I think it shows parents the 4-year power of a place-based liberal arts college like Sewanee, right? That I so am with you. When I started doing this earlier and had a few seniors last semester, like, wow, who would not want their son or daughter to become similar to that college student? Whereas, and also seniors, you're right, like talking about first-year roommates and why I chose, that's
It's really hard. Yeah, the depth and breadth in terms of experience between, a senior in high school and a sophomore or a junior, or a senior in college and a sophomore and junior in high school is worlds apart.
And you manage the expectations and let guests know they will be separated before?
We do. And
okay,
we get maybe 2 complaints a year, and that's it.
Okay. I think when you talk about,
you can be funny about it, and I'm, I dismiss scores and I'm funny, and people laugh.
I'm going to take a hunch and say this has to be impacting your enrollment positively.
I think it definitely does.
It probably disarms the parents a little bit in their behavior that they exhibit that we've seen on some other campuses, right?
I think it does. And I think we're very unusual because we don't have some of the kind of unfortunate situations that I've heard other visit coordinators having with parents who are really aggressive and very aggressive on tour. So we just don't, it's not something that we run into. And it's because they're separated. It really is. But I think with your virtual options, you've got to add those virtual options for parents as well, that are parents only. And last year we had great success with Q&A with an admission counselor for parents only. And there were times, we had a couple of sessions this past spring where we had 80 or 90 parents in sessions. And, I think they're relieved. They're able to ask questions without their students present of an admission counselor. And
I think your recognition of parents in this separation also recognizes them and admits, we know you're, a collaborative purchase, a co-purchaser. We've created this online event for you. We've created this version of the campus visit for you. And I think it's got to also help retention of the Arcadians because they're probably having more fun.
They definitely do. They do. And our freshmen would much rather give a tour to a senior in high school, because what are the seniors concerned about in high school? They're concerned about, where am I going to eat? Where am I going to live? Where am I going to work out? And those are things that our younger tour guides can really speak to, because it's a very close experience to them. Our seniors, not so much. So
if I have a best practice that I've gotten out of this totality of our back to campus, but not like before, is listen to Mae. If you can, separate them. How was that pain? Was there any challenges or anything you would recommend to someone who's listening this is like, we're going to give this a try?
Well, it was really our staff that had the biggest hangups with it. It was really, really interesting. They were so scared to try this. And I was like, no, I really think that we need to, because that was our generational research was just coming out about Gen X. And I was like, I really think that we should try this. And it works, and it works every time. And it took about 6 months for our staff to really buy into it. And new staff members are always leery of it because they think they're going to get pushback from parents. But we are very upfront in our visit confirmations. This is what's going to happen. If I have a parent on the phone, I tell them this is what's going to happen.
Managing expectations.
Right. They are all, 100% of the time on the phone, they are like, oh, wow, what a great idea. I can't wait to come and visit. Great. We can't wait to have you.
Yeah. So more, are your younger students further away or close by, still in that pandemic proximity?
I think they're definitely close by.
Okay.
And I think that the trick is going to be for all of us moving forward that we're having these much younger visitors. So not only do we need to pay attention to our senior cohort and make sure that they are converting to the applicant stage, but how are we going to work over the next year, 2, 3 years to get our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors back on campus and close that loop? And what communication and what virtual options can we use to close that gap right there?
So what I'm hearing is because a few other clients have shared the same thing, this younger. Why do you think?
I mean, they haven't been able to do anything for so long.
Okay. So
and people are jumping at the chance. And I think people are also, and I think you and I have talked about this before, a little bit wary that we'll hit another pandemic wave and things will shut down again.
Yeah. So it's what I'm taking away then is this future visit. Predict for me. My prediction is the online is going to remain and the smart ones are going to reuse it. But again, just like the visit can't be like it was before the pandemic, the online can't be it was during the first year or two in the pandemic. That if we're getting more sophomores or some first year high school students coming, then we've got to create the online experiences for them and get them to come back.
Get them back. So it's really a 3-step process. They're going to visit in person when they're very young, and that can be really great for some students or confusing for others, I think. And then you've got to have those virtual options to fill that gap before the time they come back and visit. You need to continue to engage with them, whether it's a messaging platform, whether it's cool videos. Videos work really well, just because, it's a short little, burst of attention for them. Whatever it takes to bridge that gap and get them back to campus, whether it's their junior or their senior year, that return visit for the small schools is so important.
Okay. So you are an admissions pro at 2 top national liberal arts colleges, Agnes Scott. Boy, you went from like Atlanta, Decatur to Sewanee.
Crazy. It was luckily I'd gone to school at Sewanee, so I wasn't like going blind, and I knew what I was getting into. So it definitely was an adjustment for me, for my family, but I wouldn't have done anything differently.
No, that's great. So what word of advice would you give a newer, someone that joined up in the pandemic and is new to admissions or the campus visit? What advice would you give them at this moment?
Never forget your overreaching, enrollment goals, because your campus visits feed directly into them. So learn how to read your numbers and watch them really carefully. And that's something that, Stephanie Ballmer, rest her soul, was one of the most amazing deans, in admission. And that was a lesson that she taught me early on. And I'm so grateful for that. But I would also say that if you're going to be very successful at the campus, in the campus visit business, you have to take your big picture and filter it down to your small picture. And you have to be very detail oriented, and you also have to form very close relationships with your student ambassadors. We often talk within our organization about a cult of personality. Remember that song, Jeff?
Oh yeah.
That was a good song. Jeff.
Ask not what your country
can do for you. But you've got to have buy-in from your tour guides and the leaders of your organization. And the leaders of your organization have to have buy-in for the students who report to them and they manage. If you don't, your lines of communication are going to fall apart. And then if you do plan to use alums, guess what? You've got your tour guide organization is a great segue into, alumni volunteers and leveraging their experiences. We have 150 alumni interviewers that are comprised of former senior interviewers in our office. And those are the only people that can join that group. And they know me very well, and I know them very well. And, it's because we have really close relationships. So keeping your eye on the big picture while also filtering it down and knowing that, if you don't have those relationships, you're not going to be successful.
People recruit people.
They definitely do.
And all the more to place-based education. And it shows you that a great campus tour supported with leadership who gets it, your direction, the faculty and staff buy-in, I think is very strong at Sewanee, and that's a key to support it. That even in what would be called a rural campus, right? Like you can people they will come to the place if you're authentically revealing it.
Absolutely, they definitely will.
So parents separating. I'm going to start challenging my clients more on this after our conversation.
I feel of all the things we do, I feel most strongly about that.
I think, yeah, that's a whole, that if there's a lesson coming out of this pandemic, that and then it's okay to have a velvet rope, right? And not do too much, and that the online is going to need to support promotion of the to get them on campus.
Absolutely. Mass customization is, I think, mission critical for small schools.
Okay. So lastly, what's your favorite tradition at Sewanee? Because it's chock full of them.
Oh my gosh. I love, and this was the first tradition that really resonated with me as a freshman. We tap the roof of our cars as we leave, as we go through the gates of Sewanee. And that's because Sewanee is populated by angels. And before people were there, angels were there. When you're on campus, you don't need your angel because you're surrounded by angels. But when you leave, you tap the roof of your car, and then I always tap my heart, and you grab your angel and take it with you. And your angel will always guide you back to Sewanee.
I always do that when I leave campus, but it might be a couple years before I release that angel when I return back to the gates.
Well, we have to get you back to campus. Well, and we have cute little buttons that we hand out that are called angel tokens at the end of each information session. And the counselor conducting the information session says, I'm going to close and tell you, the angel story and the angel tradition. And, you might not come back as a current student, even though we hope you do, but you might bring your son or daughter back. You might come back as an adult, but you will come back. So.
Mae, as always,
Jeff, always a pleasure.
You're brilliant. Your heart for all you do for the campus visit, not just at Sewanee, but for the campus visit. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Always a pleasure. And thanks to Jarrett and Alex for having us.
I know. And Jarrett's back. He was just waiting for us to wrap it up.
That's right. No, I didn't want to interrupt, but Mae, thank you so much. I learned a ton listening in on that. And Jeff, thank you as always for being such a great host. So thank you everybody who attended. Just as a reminder, we're going to be sending out a recording of this to all our friends who didn't make it to the live session. And we will be back next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern to talk about digital advertising in the increasingly privacy-focused world that we live in. So I hope to see everybody there. So Mae, Jeff, audience members, thank you so much. I hope everybody has a great afternoon, and we'll see everybody soon.
Thanks, guys.